mental health and entrepreneurship. Today's topic is actually going to be curing the mental health stigma. Just for people that don't know, just a quick background on why we're doing this. We're founders of Start Day One. It's a nonprofit foundation for mental health and suicide prevention. We have a more proactive approach in helping people instead of a reactive one that most organizations do. Most organizations typically, are trying to remedy the result rather than the cause. For example, they're actually asking people to call when they have suicidal tendencies. And to us, the reactive approach is almost too late. It's just more effective to do a proactive approach where you try to reach out to people before they get to that, getting mental issues. So anyway, our goal is really to change people's perspective from dreaming of one day to starting day one. Day one signifies there's the day two, day three, day four. So that kind of shows that, you don't have to change overnight. Just like, physical health. We're not saying if you do 50 push-ups, you're going to lose 50 pounds. Like, it's going to take some time. So you can't just think positive tomorrow and go, well, that didn't work. So we're really just trying to change your perspective, because for us, it all stems from a bad perspective, which evolves to become suicidal tendencies. And if we can help change your perspective here, then you never get to suicidal tendencies. And in between is really just, anxiety, depression, PTSD, alcoholism, things like that. So, and the end is obviously suicide. So anyway, we actually have a guest with us to discuss his experience with, stigma. We've had discussions about this. So I figured we've talked to him. He's got a little bit of, his own experience with that. So I'd like to introduce Carl Palzer. Oh, wait, unmute him real quick there.
Quick. There we go.
I think you're on mute. No, now you muted him.
All right.
Hello, how's everybody?
Hi, Carl.
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess just tell everyone kind of a little bit of your background.
All right, so especially in this field, a little bit of background. So right after I was going through college and 9/11 happened, I joined the service, joined the Marines. Did my 4 years. I was in Indonesia during the tsunami. I was also in Sri Lanka. Then I was also in Iraq. So when I came back, there really wasn't much for the military people. They really this was 2005. They still didn't have anything. PTSD wasn't something you were actually diagnosed with. There's been multiple names of it for years. Survivor guilt. During Vietnam, I forget the name of it, what it was called. It was then there's the Gulf syndrome and everything like that. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing I think it is just changing your entire culture that you're in the military to the civilian life. What you're taught, trained, told when to eat, when to sleep, what to do, everything. Don't question anything, just do it. So that when you become a civilian again, it's kind of hard to adjust. And it wasn't until I think recently, like the mid 2000s and after that, people started realizing that it was more of a mental health thing. So I struggled through PTSD and depression, because also with the physical restraints, because of what I went through and everything with injuries, knees, back, feet, and everything, that I wasn't able to do and perform the other things I used to be able to do, which caused depression for me. Mm-hmm. I felt like a failure. I failed my family. I couldn't do anything. I was going to school. I held a job. I paid my bills and everything, but I was still struggling. My family knew I was struggling a lot with alcoholism and dependencies. And then I met Jack from working with him through Fukitt, No More Excuses, and told a story about his brother and everything, because I attempted suicide. I thought about suicide often, and just talking with him and working with him about what he went through and his exposure to mental health really helped me to get out of it and change my mind. And what he always would say was, hey, you got to fix yourself. Don't worry about what people think. You got to change your lifestyle or nothing's going to change. And that was like a big thing. I started actually going to school for something I like, not just going to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when
so-
you were gone.
Yeah.
Hemingway's days.
Yeah. So then I started messing with computers and stuff like that, which I always liked doing as a hobby, and turned it into a career. So now I work for Bloomberg, and I work in the data center. I was in charge of a team of one of their entire environments. And it took a while to get back into my rhythm of being back who I think I was, even as a person. It took probably about 8 years to finally like get back to start feeling
Yeah.
positive about myself.
How long were you in the military for? How many years?
I just did 4 years.
4
I did one
years.
tour.
And it took 8 to get you back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, cool. So cool. So at least now people know a little bit more about your background and stuff. So topic of the day, stigma.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about stigma and stuff, but I keep trying to, me, I'm always trying to analyze things, right? And I'm like, all right, and my goal here is not to be right or anything. It's just to save lives, period.
Yep.
So I want to make sure I'm looking for the cause of things, because my thing is you always try to remedy the cause, not the result, right? So I'm a huge advocate of that, because a lot of shit just goes wrong because everyone keeps just looking at the result. Just an example for people that haven't seen any episodes or anything. For example, depression, right? One of the biggest things that I'm seeing right now with depression is that they're only looking at the result. Depression is just the result. It's not the cause. But now they're using it as the cause. Oh, you have depression. Oh, my depression is rough today. Oh, man, I've been dealing with depression since 2012. It's like, what do you mean? Like, depression doesn't just get you and bite you and all of a sudden you become depressed. Your perspective, there's a cause that's causing you to become depressed. That's why you're in depression. So the problem with that I don't like that society and society and organizations and doctors are doing is because I know, like, this, when you're in a bad fucking state of mind, excuses are your best friend.
100%.
And right, and accountability is your worst enemy. Happiness, that's not my fault because my dad beat me. Oh, that's not my fault. I went to war. Like, that's why I'm depressed. Like, all right, you got to start taking accountability someday. And the more they give them these excuses, the worse it gets. So anyway, let's look at stigma. I look at it, right? And I'm like, okay, we've had quick discussions, but it was very quick. So someone mentioned, my friend Brian Murray, you know him, mentioned, hey, why don't you talk about the stigma and mental health? So I'm like, all right, let's talk about it. My tough thing about this is, like, I feel like people are mixing stigma with shame and embarrassment.
But that's exactly what it is. But I think it's because that's what society and mainstream media has put on the mental health community, including with all movies, TV shows, and stuff like that. I think that's why there's the big push now is to take the stigma out of that mental health. It's like this weird, creepy, like, oh my God, is thing.
Yeah, my issue with that, and we kind of talked about it because, we're like going back and forth, like, what do you think? I always try to prove myself wrong, right? Like, wait, that can't be right. I don't know, man. So anyway, one of the things that I see is, like, there's stigma with so many things, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. Like, no one wants to admit and go that, hey, I have fucking some kind of mental illness. But to me, it's like, well, you can't get rid of this stigma because it's kind of like when people have financial troubles. You don't go out there like, hey, I can't pay my freaking debt. Anyone can help me out? And can anyone help me? So there's that stigma. Like, if you need financial help, it's like, dude, you're so careless. You must have spent on all the wrong things and this and that. Same thing with divorce. Oh, we're going to get help from a marriage counselor. Well, now there's a stigma on, like, oh, wow, their marriage must be bad. Like, who cheated on who? Like, so to me, it's like, all right, for us to try and get rid of stigma, that's going to be an impossibility because that's always going to be a reaction and an assumption. I get it. It's an assumption. But to get rid of a stigma, that's tough. It's kind of like,
Well, I think if I could interject here, I
Yeah.
think doing programs like this,
Hmm.
um, and the biggest way to take the stigma away from mental health is
Yeah.
so people don't feel like that they're suffering by themselves. So educating
Yeah.
yourself and others is a big thing, and doing a conversation like this.
Yeah.
My company, Bloomberg, actually, they started a whole big thing about taking the stigma out of mental health. And Peter
Hmm.
Guerrero, he's been with Bloomberg since pretty much the beginning, and he's
Okay.
on the board, and he pushed this whole agenda. I went to his first speech about it here in the States, and the biggest thing he said that really stuck with me, he's like, this is the first time when somebody asked me to speak at this, and I think it was like 20 years. I always cared about my employees, but never thought about caring about their mental health, like about their
Hmm.
health. We have great benefits, everything through it.
Yeah.
And the big thing is we're with mental health, and I can understand where you're bringing in the financial stuff, take away the stigma. But what mental health is educating people so they don't have the wrong idea about it. Um, if you're injured, the way I look at it, if I have a broken wrist and you can see that it's broken,
Hmm.
you're going to ask me about it. You're going to
Yeah.
be like, oh my God, my wrist hurts. I'm going to a doctor. And you're going to go to a professional to fix
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Mental health was, the thing in the past was always, oh, you're just not strong enough. You can handle it, do it yourself, you can take care of it. And that's what a lot of people brought up. I remember when I was going through it, my father was even saying to me, oh, you could do it, you're strong mental, I brought you up better, you can do it. And that's tough because that's what a lot of people were brought up. So
Mhm.
taking the stigma out is so people don't so people understand that it's okay if you are going through these things. It's okay. A
Yeah.
lot more people go through it than you think. I think it's a 1 in 25 people actually at one point in their lives live with a serious mental illness. One in
Yeah.
a five Americans, adults, will experience a mental health issue.
See, so one of my concerns, right, when you're looking at that stuff, it's like, just like depression, like I get it, you're in depression or anxiety. Okay, got it. You're in anxiety because something's making you anxious. And to me, it's always starts with a bad perspective. I always look at the cause, and the cause is always a verb. It is never a noun. You can't just go PTSD. What about PTSD? Like, what did it do to you? Nothing. You're
Yeah.
just talking about a result, right? It's because what you're thinking about is causing you to be depressed, and that now you have some kind of PTSD, right? So anyway, my fear with the stigma is turning it into an excuse,
Mhm.
because it's kind of like, I'm not going to approach Kristen. She's not going to like me anyway. It's kind of like when with the society, well, there's white privilege, so I'm not going to try for that job. It's like you made the assumption yourself. You're coming up with the excuse that there's a stigma. I need some personal experience first, that you got the personal stigma, then go, there's fucking stigma, dude. Don't go like, oh, there's racism. You're telling me that everyone's racist, and now you're not going to progress. Tell me what made you what personally attacked you, because Obama was the president. I'm pretty sure he was black, but you're saying there's this, like, this invisible, this just invisible enemy that you have going on. So my fear is, like, when people start using it, almost like this entitlement. So my thing is this: is it more effective to help people out by giving them an excuse of the stigma? Oh, it's not your bad, it's because there's this stigma, and a lot
No,
of people, like,
I
you
think
know
that's where you're not really understanding with the whole point of taking the stigma away. They're taking the stigma away.
yeah.
It is not taking away the excuse. It's opening the eyes to the rest of the world so they don't just look at the mental health, the small
You know
little
what?
thing, and give them excuses. I
Yeah.
think that's what it
Oh,
was.
no, no,
It
no, I
was
get
their
that. I
excuses.
think I think the best way to continue this discussion, I need an example of a stigma. Like, what? Give me an example.
Okay,
Give me an
so
example. Like,
stigma. So here's stigma. I think most people in society think that people that have mental health are violent.
see,
I don't get that.
I don't know how many people I've met that would go mental health. Oh, it must be violent. I've never. I don't see anyone looking down on someone. See, and this what there's the mix-up.
Because this is what the group that you're in, because of your businesses, you talk to the people that understand what you do and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
we're more open to speak to you about it. So
Yeah.
I don't think you see the stigma as much as the other people. I remember we were.
But wait, don't forget, don't get that wrong. You're a little wrong on that, because he had a brother who committed suicide who was in the military, who obviously there was some sort of mental health issue there. He's got another brother who has severe mental health issues, as far as like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and what have you.
I'm well aware.
So he's well aware of the stigma of it.
I guess it's just like, I've never seen anyone actually, I just don't know anyone that's going to go like, oh, you're depressed. It's not the depression, it's the actions of the depressed. So for example, that's what I meant about an excuse. I guess I just didn't want it to be a justification for people's actions, because it's not my job to adapt to you. It's your job to adapt to normalcy.
Right.
But it's kind of like, when that's what I mean. It's like, I want something that's more effective, because it's kind of like with kids, right? Everyone gets a prize because it makes them feel better. But man, is that really better for the kids? Because now they don't know how to handle loss when they grow up. So to me, it's like, what's the better way? So the stigma thing, I'm just afraid it becomes this entitlement that
I have a problem, so the world has to cater to me kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't see like, so the biggest issue out there that they're saying is like, oh, we got to get rid of stigma because people won't go for help because of the stigma. But that's kind of like I said before, there's racism, so I'm not going to try out for this job. It's like, do it first and then tell me you got pushed back. Do you know what I mean? No matter what, it's an internal issue. And that's why I'm talking like this, is because to someone that's listening, it's like, dude, you need to be more accountable. Do not say there's a stigma and then not go for help. Go for fucking help, like right now, because no one's stopping you, you know?
But I don't think the stigma, I think the way it was the way people were brought up. And that's a big thing about, it might be seen differently because it's completely different across all different cultures.
Yeah.
And that's like another thing. Like, people don't really consider it in some cultures, mental health actually a thing.
Right.
And I think that's the point.
They don't go to therapy and stuff. Yeah.
They don't, because they don't believe that mental health is actually an illness.
Right.
And they're brought up that. And then suicide levels are all about certain things. So in the military, the stigma for military people is, if you ask for help, you're weak. And they're trained and reprogrammed and brainwashed that they're always strong and the best people in the world. There's no way this could be affecting me. And that's why the suicide rate is so high with veterans, where the average is 22 a day, which is insane.
So with that said, right, I'm kind of the in-between. I'm not saying mental illness doesn't exist, because my brother's in a fucking group home right now.
Yes.
So, but I'm in the between, and this is what I mean. So I know, you're talking about this different society where they say that there's no such thing as mental illness and stuff like that. But to me, my fear is, it's kind of like the way we're giving this entitlement to these kids. People are now not learning because, like I said before, people in a bad state of mind love excuses. So when you give them a fucking excuse, they latch onto it. No one gets cured from fucking PTSD because they're blaming an invisible PTSD. To me, depression is a reaction. It's an emotion. You will never get rid of depression, because that's saying if someone passes away, wait, we cured that already. You shouldn't get sad now. Are you fucking insane? Like, depression is a reaction because something sad happened. The only problem is staying there. It's not the depression. Because if you look at Dada, when I see someone that's depressed, I tell them, good. I'm glad you are.
We're almost there.
You're almost fucking there, because you're in a sense of grief from the military, from something else. I believe you come home with a feeling of a loss of your person, yourself. You lost a sense of yourself because you don't know who you are anymore. You don't even know your friends anymore because it's been a while. That happens. And so you go through grief. The grief stages, the 5 stages of grief. It starts with denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Acceptance is the biggest thing out of that. And so when we give these sort of different excuses for anything, no matter what they are, whether they're true, stigma, yes, this, that, no matter what, the cure is always internal. It's always going to be. So you can never go, oh, society needs to fix stigma before I get fixed. No, because the doctors can't even fix you. They're just guiding you. So I hope that you fix yourself, because that's the only way you get fixed. It's never external, ever. Not with mental, even the physical. It's like, unless you work out, everything kind of stems from the mindset, right? And that's why people get overweight. It's not just, everyone knows to exercise, everyone knows to diet, but how come there's still obesity? How the fuck that happen? And then we can put a mental a stigma game on that. There's stigma on freaking overweight people. But the problem is this: let's say I'm overweight, I'm in a plane, and I go, and this one's uncomfortable, and my excuse is just, you got to take it. I'm overweight.
That's happened to me before.
Yeah, but it's kind of, do you know what I mean? So that's my fear. It's like, when people use this as a stigma, it's like, well, shouldn't there be? I'm not sure why there wouldn't be. It's not the depression, it's the way they act. When someone's in a bad state of mind, they become, like you said, they could become violent. Some of them don't become violent. Some of them just get super fucking depressed and stay in their rooms. There's so many different versions of it, So it's like, the lack of stigma, that's rough, because you're telling everyone to change, but not the person.
Right.
So me, when I'm obese and I sit down like this and it's uncomfortable, I'm obese. It's like me going like, oh, I have PTSD. So I have anxiety. So, and it's just this invisible thing. It's more like, okay, you're overweight. The question is like, what are you doing about it?
But
you can't just keep using that,
Yeah, but I think that's where when you're able to openly talk about mental health, because it used to be a hush thing.
Yeah.
Society has changed, and the stigma is getting less, where instead of making fun of somebody with mental health, what you do is you talk to them and try to find out what's the underlying cause, so we can get past that.
Right.
But the stigma is getting less and less than what it used to be. 20 years ago, people wouldn't talk to anybody that had it. Be like, oh, he's just crazy. Oh, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? There weren't people, and there weren't organizations, literally, and there wasn't anybody having these conversations. So the stigma is getting away. It's for people to understand, is saying that yes, you could have mental health disease, you could have an order, so we can talk to those people, and so they can get help and not feel bad about getting help. But like you said, they have to get the help themselves.
Right.
Me personally.
Right. But see, and that's what I mean. The stigma is usually external. See, when you're talking like that, that means it's internal. It's not society's fault that you're not getting help because you think that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think we need to fix the stigma against people that are acting, because usually when someone's in a bad state of mind, they're negative, they're rude, they're all of the above. And we're told, right? Every successful, I guess, person will tell you, do not hang out with negative people. Anyone that's negative is most likely have fucking mental issues. Guaranteed. Because the only ones that talk like that and make fun of people in this is because they have mental issues. They have issues that sometimes is so far back. That's where bullying comes from. That's where suicidal tendencies come from. So it's something from the past. You know what I mean? So
some experience.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all internal. So the stigma is more internal. So it's like, dude, you can't blame society and we have to get rid of society's stigma so now you can get help. It's like, well, you can still get help, man, but you're the one saying, it's kind of like, that's why I used that excuse or that reasoning before. That's like when people say like, I'm not going to approach her. She's not going to marry me anyway. Like, well, I wanted to find out.
I think people are embarrassed to admit it, to get help, but it comes internally,
and that's what I mean.
But they're embarrassed, and it takes them longer to actually admit that they have a problem, to go get the help, because I think they're embarrassed, they're bullied from the outside and stuff like that. Like, I'll say, hey, I got a doctor's appointment this afternoon because I got this or that, but I go to say to the same people, oh, I'm going to see my psychiatrist later or psychologist. Some people still go, they're like, oh, what's wrong with that guy?
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it could just be anxiety, it could be schizophrenia or PTSD. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I don't want to hang with that guy. I don't know what he's going to do later.
Right. But
So
see,
then
the thing
I
is,
think it's more about not speaking about it openly to make yourself better,
right.
but it's also like you said, oh, I'm fat, oh, I'm crazy, get away from me, whatever. Those
Yeah.
people do exist, but I think the majority of them that suffer in silence, we could have saved. Like you said, there's people that your goal is to save people.
Yeah.
I think by taking away the mainstream, the majority of the people that don't get help because they don't think they're sick, because society's pushed them and made them even more depressed by it, saying like, oh, I can't even tell somebody I need help because they don't feel right, because it could be the environment that they're in, it could be the society that they're in, could be the culture that they're in, all
Yeah.
depending on the religion that
But
they're
see,
in. It could be everything, but so they don't even know that they can get help because it's pushed and it's bottled up.
yeah, and the thing is, it always goes back though. It's internal. So,
Oh, 100%.
and I
But
always picture it, right?
they don't realize that they can get help
Yeah,
because they
but
don't know help's out there.
yeah, and I totally get it, because that's the biggest difference with physical and mental health, is because when you have physical health, it's obvious. Like, well, I'm freaking huge, but we still get huge. It's always a gradual thing, right?
Mhm.
Always. And so to me, I'm always want to make sure like we're putting out the right message out there. Again, I get that it feels good. Kind of like when I give every fucking kid a trophy, they all feel good. But is that the right thing? That's my argument, and that's what
No.
I'm trying to make sure. It's like, dude, just saying stigma out there and making sure that this is adding more of not
Of
the
a
excuse.
crutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, dude, were
An
you?
excuse.
I can see your point of view, and
You
I
know what
think
I mean?
maybe
Because
maybe
and it's not because you're not trying to be nice. I get it, but I'm more about, does that save lives or does that actually make it worse? Because now we just give them another excuse.
We're just coddling it for no
The same way
reason.
the doctor. So this, I've said this multiple times because the best way for me to kind of set a metaphor, right? It's kind of like with people that have depression. See, to me, it's a natural response. I don't look at them like crazy. I feel bad for them. Like, fuck, how can I make them better? Obviously, not everyone acts like that. They're like, well, damn, this motherfucker's annoying.
but
So
that's
anyway,
it.
yeah, but that's
That's
the
the
thing.
stigma.
It's that, no, but I'm responding to the actions, not the cause of it. Do you see what I mean? Just because I have PTSD doesn't give me the right to be a dick.
Right.
At all. Like,
No,
but you're saying like, yeah, but you got
100%.
PTSD, let that go, because that's stigma. See, and I don't like that, because now it's hurting them more. The same way people complain about millennials being, overly entitled. And I'm like, dude, putting an entitlement on that. Oh, I don't know, man, if that's going to be better than it is to tell them what's up and go like, oh, you're not going to call for help? Well, dude, it's up to you. Fuck the stigma. Fuck the racism. Fuck this. It's like, you're not going to apply for that job because you think there's racism? Well, that's weird. Now we have to get rid of racism. Well, the thing is, if you're not making yourself better, how the hell do you get rid of racism? If you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm going. Like, all right, there's a very thin line where you want to give so much, and then all of a sudden it backfires and goes, it became a freaking crutch. God damn it.
Yeah.
And like you
No,
said
I
before,
understand exactly what you mean. But before that, there's plenty of people that didn't go get help,
yeah,
didn't ask for help, because
yeah,
there weren't people like you and like me that were willing to openly talk about it publicly on a forum
definitely.
like this.
That is
And
definitely the thing. Yeah, right.
that's what I mean. And I think
And-
that's what the thing is about, taking the stigma out so we can openly talk about it and not
yeah,
be embarrassed about what we've gone through and everything. So we can reach those other people that go, holy shit, I could talk to these people, and then they can go get help, not using
yeah,
it as a crutch. I think it's to opening it up. And the biggest thing is be consistent with the language and educate yourself and others. I think
yeah.
that's how you take the stigma, and I think that's how the stigma has gone away.
And
The biggest thing in the corporate world is, if you're suffering from a mental disorder with depression or anxiety or anything like that, you don't want
yeah,
to talk to your boss about it because you think you're going to get judged by it. So
yeah,
now they might have this pre-conditioned idea about people with that mental illness or
yeah,
something. Then all of a sudden they're like, this guy can't handle this job, or oh my God, I don't want
yeah.
to yell at this guy. He's going to freak out on me. That's
Here's,
also the thing that people need to
yeah,
understand, that they fall into, that they don't want to be open in certain areas of
yeah,
their life because they're worried about their recompressions of their mental health.
So I have two things to say about that. So one, remember, you know how you said, and it's kind of true. People are talking about it more. Yeah, there's a little more. It's like I said, it's kind of like looking for help for financial help. There's a stigma on that. People are scared to do it. So if we started talking more about it's not a big deal, ask for fucking help, people will probably go like, yo, man, I need some money. People are doing it now and GoFundMe, right?
Yeah.
But what's funny is talking about the past. When I was growing up, depression was normal. I don't know when it became an abnormal emotion. Because when you go through some shit, if you don't get depressed, you're fucking weird. Now, it's when you get depressed, dude, you got to go to the doctor. I just lost someone. I just fucking saw my friend's blood get blown up.
Let me grieve.
Right. So to me, it's hard for me that argument is different for me because I'm just like, to me, it's normal. Like I said before, you're in depression? Good. Like, fucking good. I'm glad you are, because the next step is acceptance and you're almost there. That's always the hardest. The end is always the hardest. I used the metaphor before. It's kind of like final exams, marathons. The fucking finish line is not the easiest. That dude is tired. You know
but I also think it also has to come down to, with mental health, that there's two things that, like you said, it could be just emotional and you're going through a tough time and stuff. But then there are people that do have chemical imbalances that don't realize that they need to take certain medications just to get themselves to the right level, and then they could fight through the rest of the emotional depression because of their chemical imbalance. And then there's people that are going through a certain thing that you're like, it's good, you should be depressed. That's a normal feeling. That's a normal feeling. And then they can work through of getting better to get through the depression.
My thing is that
most people understand there's two different things, because there's some that have emotional mental disorders that can get through therapy and talk and growth and changing the way of life, like eating disorders and stuff like that. But then there's also other mental health issues that some people do need a certain medical regimen that help because they do have a chemical imbalance.
So to me, again, I look for the cause of things, right? I do believe that there's a chemical imbalance. The problem is, what is causing the chemical imbalance? So people don't notice, but your mind can actually change your chemical imbalance. Right now, if you smile your ass off, you're actually going to produce some positive chemical imbalance. When you think of the worst things in your life, basically people are in depression. That's their constant view, right? So cortisol keeps pumping out. Your brain does not know the damn difference when your stress response. They think, oh, a tiger is after me, so cortisol. So your chemical fucking imbalance goes like this. People don't realize when you say balance, that means it's doing this. It's not. No, it's like this. To balance out. So to balance out, it's like, dude, what's your thought pattern? What's causing your cortisol to go so fucking far up? It's because you think it's the end of the world. Well, because whatever happened to me might happen again. There's a trigger and this and that. All right, you need to learn to that. And I think one of the biggest things that can actually help. So my problem with like PTSD and just titles, it actually hurts people because they just latch on and there's never a cure to a title. You never cured depression. So I believe it should be more like, instead of going like, my PTSD's coming up, or my depression's coming up. It's better if it's like, oh man, I'm still so sad about losing my freaking brother. So I'm having a little trouble with that. That is more legit. No one looks down on but it's when people use the damn depression or these titles, that's when they become annoying. You gotta remember, people in a bad state of mind, whether it's true or not, they're fucking annoying. They're negative. They're nagging. They bring you down. That's why successful people go, dude, do not surround yourself with that because they'll bring you down. It sucks because the only way to help them is to fucking put up with it and just be like, what's up? Listening, right? It's the hardest fucking thing.
It is 100%.
Especially when all they're doing is negative. The thing is, what happens is because it infects your mind and then you get to become negative.
But
So
but if
that's
you're
the hard
able
part.
but if you're able to talk through their negativity to find, like you always say, the underlying issue,
Yeah,
get through them. But and that's why there's people that if you didn't do what you did because you're like, everybody's just crazy, whatever, then
yeah,
you wouldn't have those people that come to you and then you can
yeah,
have your story and tell them. The same thing with me is
yeah,
when if I don't go out there and tell people, especially at work and stuff like that, like, hey, you can come to it any problem. I've gone through this.
yeah,
And then they feel more relaxed to come talk to you.
yeah,
And that's when you're
and,
helping people get past
yeah,
their
and
depression. Because there's a difference between being, like you said, depressed and
Mhm.
in a state of depression.
yeah,
Right.
Because you said the same thing. Like, so I could sit there and I'm like, oh man, I'm just depressed. Bad
yeah,
day, whatever. I'm depressed, whatever. But I have the tools to know how to fight myself to not fall
right,
into a bad manic
right,
depressed
and
state.
yeah, and
And because
always,
I could fight myself to put those extra endorphins in to
yeah,
make myself happy, to get myself to balance myself out.
yeah,
Some people don't have those tools, and that's why sometimes they need the medication to
right.
get themselves back to the balance, like you
Yeah,
said.
but here's the thing. So again, it's all about remedy the cause, not the result. A lot of times when people in depression, I remember talking to this one girl too. She goes to me like, "Oh yeah, I got diagnosed with depression or whatever." And she goes, "So when am I going to get off these things?" They're like, "Not. What do you mean?
They told her
No, you
never.
don't." It's like you're just trying to remedy the result. So let's go back to what you said
Well,
before.
I think that's also the difference between what psychiatrist or psychologist you went to, because I've gone for help and it was to a certain period of time. Now she
Right.
might just be going to a psychiatrist that loves to make money and just pushing
Yeah,
pills, but
yeah,
not
but
there to help
yeah,
somebody.
but
So
let
I think she might just want to find somebody new to go to.
Right. But basically, where I was going with that, right? I like that you mentioned before, you kind of, I think you said you broke your arm, right? So I've actually used that same kind of metaphor with people going through PTSD and all that stuff. So I tell them, this is what's happening. You broke your freaking leg. And people, they motivate and inspire, right? They go, "Ah, dude, just walk it off. You got this. Come on, you can do it. Carl, go, Carl." You know? And the thing is, what do? You're like, "Oh, yeah, but I can't." "Oh, hold on. Let me take some of these pills to numb the pain." That's all it's doing. It's numbing the result, right? So it's just numbing the pain. The thing is, now you can walk on it because you can't fucking feel it.
Yeah.
But is it getting better?
Nope.
No. So now you're walking on it. "Oh, yeah, I can hang out. Hey, what's up?" Because I'm numb. Same thing those fucking drugs do. You're getting rid of the feeling, it's the chemical imbalance, so you're tricking it. You never got rid of the cause. And then all of a sudden, the thing's not working anymore, or the pain just gets way over, and now you can't handle the pain anymore. You're suicidal now. And so that's what I mean about, dude, all that's doing is remedying the result. Let's talk about, so when there's a chemical imbalance, you have to know that you also have some kind of accountability in that. Don't rely on a pill to throw your chemical imbalance the right way, because the cause is still there. You cannot fucking forgive your dad. You have to forgive your dad. You have to let go. You have to do so many things. I don't know what it is. Everyone's experience is different. That's when listening skills come in. But is that curing the person? No. I know it helps
Well,
because you numbed it the same way I can run if I numb the pain. So to me, that's what
100%.
my
But that's why I
concern is,
think
you know?
treatment for mental health problems vary depending on the individual.
Yeah.
Like I said, it could include medication, therapy, or both.
Right.
Because
Oh,
many
totally.
individuals work with a support system during the
Right.
healing and the recovery process. But that's the whole thing, is the healing. Like you said at the like you say, if you don't fix the underlying issue,
Mhm.
you're going to keep going, and it's going
Right.
to keep coming
And
back.
and
The
that's
Right.
the
so
big thing, to get back to the topic of not just mental health of
yeah.
this conversation, the stigma, is
Yeah.
now that I think people are willing to talk to people
Mhm.
and more people are getting help.
Yeah.
Like here's an example. I don't want to start any political or anything like
No,
that,
no.
but so people are saying gun violence, take away the guns.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, you're not going to solve the mental health problem in the United States by taking away the guns.
Right.
Yeah. If someone
People
Right.
are
is
still going to have mental health
Knives,
issues that can
cars.
with knives or
yeah,
whatever,
that could
they'll
turn violent,
find a
that could
way.
use
Right.
something else.
Yeah. And that's a great example of you
Yeah.
got to remedy the cause,
Right.
because the gun, Again, the cause is never a noun. You can't say it's the gun. It's a noun. It does nothing. It does nothing. It has to be a verb. Always, always, always. And the remedy or the cure is also a verb. It's not, oh, this pill will do it. Nope, that's not going to do it. It's not going to do it.
It's a process. It's a recovery, healing and recovery process. The only way you're going to get through it. And some people can struggle with it on an everyday basis. And
that's my thing. It's supposed to be a fucking struggle. When someone went to her, tell her the story. If someone was like, oh, I lost my sister or something like that.
Which one? I have so many stories.
Someone lost his sister, and so I might be a little depressed.
Yeah, and I was like, well, you're supposed to be. And she just like looked at me. She was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're supposed to be depressed. You just lost your sister. You're supposed to be depressed.
Right.
Like,
so, and that's what I mean. So I'm looking back at it. It's like, I don't think it's the stigma that has to stop. There's always going to be stigma against assholes or bad, rude kind of personalities, negative personalities. That's always going to be there. Right. So that's something you can't take away, because you can't assume it's because of mental issues right away. You can just be an asshole, like you don't know. Right. Yeah. So you're putting a stigma on a different case, not the mental illness itself, but in any case, it's like, all right, we have to figure out. So what's the thing here? I'm trying to change people's perspective basically in the entire mental health arena, right? Because I think there's been it's making it worse. Like you said before, like more people are willing to talk about it now. Before they were talking about it because it was just like, it was an emotion. People just kind of knew, but it was just more, dude, you got to talk that out. You're keeping it in. That's no good.
Right.
And I get it. The biggest one is trying to be macho or just trying not to look like you have issues. The same reason people don't go like, oh, by the way, I have money problems. No one will do that. So that's always going to be there, because you can't, it's hard to get rid of that, right? It's always going to be hard. And then, so to me, I just don't want people using stigma. So how the fuck do we cure the stigma? And I think it's your perspective on what do you think stigma is. Is it internal, an assumption that you think there's a stigma? Well, then you're not going to go for help, because that's your perception. Kind of like when people say, oh, there's racism, that's why I'm still poor. Really?
No, I understand what you're saying with that. But so here's I guess an example of the stigma, because you asked for it before. So like I said, as a military, you brought up, and that I'm supposed to be tough and strong, and I don't have mental health issues. And then the thing was, and then you don't want to ask for help because you're not supposed to have these issues. And then when you ask for help, and then you get the negative response, but like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be having these issues. You should be able to fight through it. When sometimes there should be a support group, or there should be other people out there to say, hey, it's all right. I've gone through this. Let me help you the steps to get out. I remember there was I forget, it was a letter or something that I read. It was, so Staff Sergeant sees private in the hole, tells him to get out of the hole while he's digging the hole. Gives him a shovel. Then he goes through, then the gunny was like, oh, what are you doing down there? Get yourself out. Gives him another shovel. And he just keeps digging. The hole just keeps getting bigger. Then now all of a sudden, the doctor walks by and he looks down and goes, hey, what are you doing down there? Here's some pills. You can get out. Eats the pills. He just keeps digging. So now he's at the bottom of this hole. He doesn't know what to do. He's got pills and shovels, all the tools he thinks he needs. Then his veteran buddy jumps in the hole and sits there and goes, hey, I've been here with you. Let's get out together. And then they could dig the steps to get out together. And that really, when I read that, forget what the whole thing, that was pretty much like the recap what it was. But that was to show that if there's a stigma on it saying, get out yourself, you could do it yourself. I don't know why you're having these problems, because I don't have these problems. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
So like, just because I react different than that person doesn't mean this is going to help me get over it that way. And if you take the stigma out that each step, this is how you get out of every single step that way, this is how I did it to get out of it.
Yeah.
Then people stuck in the same things. That people need to understand there's a variety of people in this world, obviously. And then there's a variety of ways that people react to something. The biggest thing to prevent mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders is to focus, like you said, addressing the known risk factors that cause these things. So like you said, handing trophies to people and stuff like that. We need a better education outcomes, higher overall productivity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just improve the quality of life, which improves
Yeah.
lifespan and
Before
phone.
I lose my thought. So again, I always look at the cause, right? So when I'm looking at that, no matter what, no matter where they come from, what their nationality is, culture, this, that, it doesn't matter. What is consistent is that it always starts internally, 100% starts with a decision. Has to be you. And from what I've learned, all this motivational help, me, hey, how's it going? Those are all meaningless if your perspective never changes. So when that dude jumped down in that hole and said, yo, let's get out of here together. But the guys are like, nah, dude, I got to keep digging. It never comes from someone, ever. It is internal. So for me, the cure to stigma is always going to be, dude, stop taking away from people accountability. I think the education is, dude, you have to know that you are 100, not 99.99, 100% responsible and accountable for your own happiness. Because the more you do this, the more, not because they're just awesome. It's because when you're in a bad state of mind, and all of us get there, I'm not immune to that shit. I will complain like a motherfucker, like when I'm in a bad place. And all of a sudden, I just bitch slap myself and go, whoa, sorry, man. But I'm glad I got that out. You have to talk it out. But it's a natural response. Yeah. And the thing is, so that's where I think it's like, dude, it always starts with a decision. It's the perspective. So if that dude, you came down, you hear it all the time. Dude, I tried to help him. Couldn't help him because you didn't change his perspective enough.
It's like a drug addict, people who are addicted to heroin or whatever, opioids, whatever. And then, the parents force the kid to go to rehab. Right. The kid goes to rehab. They come out 6 months later. They're good for a month. Then parents throw them back in, or the court throws them back in. Every time they go in, they come back out, they relapse.
Because they don't want to change.
Right. Until
they never took the accountability.
They decide that for themselves that they want to get better. Then they'll go to rehab. That's when it'll work.
Yeah.
They have to decide. You have to decide. You're responsible.
Yeah. And when it starts there, I'm telling you, man, I think the people getting better will fucking rise dramatically. But when you keep giving them the excuse, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like, dude, you're still responsible, though. The hug feels good. That should be done.
And it may not be your fault. You
right.
may have experienced some shit.
The thing is, it's not about faults or anything. Like, dude, it's how you're dealing with it. That's the problem. It's because it's already gone. It's the past. People would it's post-traumatic, right? It's after trauma. So it's gone. The only thing kicking your ass right now is your perspective on it. I don't know what's going on, but your perspective is stuck somewhere and you're kicking your own ass. Like no one else is doing it anymore. It's not happening right now. So that's kind of, so it always kind of starts there. So I think that's why our goal with Start Day One is changing people's perspective. Because until you change, kind of like people in rehab, until you let them realize and change their perspective, like, dude, it starts with a decision. It's going to be tough. Oh, you can't hear, Carl? What happened?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, delayed.
It just went weird.
Yeah,
my headphones.
I have some questions out there. Does anyone have any questions or just comments or anything like that?
For us or for Carl, for anyone, just something to say?
Yeah, again, our conversation here is great because we're trying to talk about it. It's not about being right.
No.
It's about what's the best way, man. What's the best way? What can we do?
Because there really is no
to save more lives. Right.
Wrong.
Right.
It's it's just. Let's see, what's this?
Yeah, whatever that person takes to, that can help them change their mind.
Let's see, Michael, what can we do to stop automatic inclusion? Not sure what you mean with that one. What can we do to change entitlement perspectives? What can we do to help kids learn to deal with life's disappointments and wins? Oh, dude, easy peasy. So almost every fucking issue stems from the past. For example, bullying. Bullying doesn't just come out of nowhere. We all knew big kids in high school, but why the fuck weren't they bullies? because they would have been awesome at it, sick. Like no one would have messed with them. Instead, what happens? It's the ones that have issues, most likely coming from home. To remedy that, well, you have to talk to the parents. Almost every time it's the parents. So I always look at one thing to help relate with people. We're just puppies. We're just puppies. What do you call it? Pit bulls. There's this bad stigma on pit bulls, right? They all bite. They're all bad dogs. But I think people know that they're just caused to become that way because of the parental guidance that they've gotten. They beat the shit out of the dog, something, right? Same thing with kids. We're all just puppies. And sometimes, we go through all this stuff and they don't realize that they're just puppies and you just took in everything that you've gotten from your parents. So this sense of awareness, and when you change someone's perspective and go, oh, your dad, that was a real dick to you. He was a puppy too. I don't know what to tell you what his life was like, but that's how he turned out. So that's the only way to find out what the cause was is to figure it out by listening and going like, so what happened to you, Dad? Like, why are you so mean to me? Why did you beat me? So it's really tough. So parenting, it's all about parenting, because when they're young, man, like they don't know. That's why you have to parent them till 18, because they're basically
Babies.
they're in training for life. The mission was supposed to be when they're 18, they should be able to handle themselves for good. They just visit now. But the problem is, what do we do? One of the things that's happened, the women workforce, there's no more moms staying at home. Like, what do you think is going to happen? There's no mom. There's the kids with other people. They're not being taught these family values anymore. No one really sits down at dinners anymore. No one's sitting and getting up for elders anymore. Those are parental guidance stuff. Like, that's some just standard stuff. Like, that's not something new.
But that was standard for us growing up, and it's changed,
right.
because
But
you
the
need
new
to have
parents,
because you need to have both parents working to afford
not
the same things.
necessarily. Not necessarily.
Well, even if both parents are still working, you can still teach your children respect.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I'm not giving anybody excuses.
Yeah. No, but no matter what, it almost always stems from that. And I've learned sometimes it actually just requires one of the parents to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Dad wasn't awesome, but my mom was just very loving. And that's all it required, was one person. You even see it in movies. The dad's an alcoholic, but mom's like, oh, baby, you're going to be a star. All of a sudden they became a star. It takes just one. It takes one. And that's actually why, so it's all about the parenting, right? That's actually why our theme color for Start Day One, we really went with teal. We actually created an acronym like, dude, don't wait for mental issues or anything. Teal stands for time, effort, attention, and love. When you can give that to kids and really anyone, if you really want to help in prevention, it's really teal. First, you put in the time, and then you put in that effort, and then more attention, and then you really give them the love. Especially with strangers, it's going to be kind of weird giving love, So, but you put in some time.
Group hugs for everybody now, right?
Yeah.
Go around, hug everybody.
We could give group hugs to people, but we can't right now.
Yeah, but it was funny.
But Jack, if you look about it, look at our group of friends, usually that we hang out with and everything, and look at our parents and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we migrate to each other. You know what I mean? Because we grow up with the same type of core values that our parents taught us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Show love. Even like when I say to you guys all the time, I love you and everything like that. It's to show love, respect, and stuff like that. Yeah. And you migrate to the same type of people. So I think now the way, I don't know why the parents are now, it's not the same or whatever, that because I see it even with the younger kids that are higher and stuff. It's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
They don't have respect for others. You see it all the time. It's like, what's going on?
So my theory on that, so my generation, our generation, we had the strict parents. And guess what the fuck my generation did? I'm not going to be like that to my kids.
Yeah.
Blame you. I blame you, Jack.
Everyone's getting a trophy.
It's our generation. Yeah, we did that because our
We did that.
parenting in our generation was
Yeah.
strict. We
When-
were born in the 70s.
Right. When people complained about millennials, and I'm like,
It's our fault.
millennials, fuck
not
that.
us, but-
Blame my generation for that one.
Yeah, we were the ones that said everybody
Let's
gets a
take some
trophy. What do you mean everybody gets a trophy?
Yeah, let's take
You
some
win and you
accountability
lose.
for that one, shall we? Like,
Yeah.
can we please?
Our
Like,
fault.
because kids just don't become kids the way they are. You know, it's like, it's
They don't know anything until you teach them.
right. And
Right.
guess what? There are people that hate their dads or parents or whatever, and they still have their damn traits. It's almost impossible to get away from it. So when you're negative at home, you know, I've seen Cesar Milan with dogs, right? So like I said before, we're just puppies. And it's like, if they can soak in the energy of humans, just being like, because it's weird. They could just sense your energy. What the hell do you think the human kid can do? It can freaking learn multiple languages at once. So when you give it that bad energy and you're bitch slapping your wife and kicking and this, and you're just angry from work, guess what that kid's gonna do?
That's all he knows. He thinks that's
just
the right
goes
thing
right
to
in.
do.
Well,
And
Thinks
like,
that's
where
life.
right. And that's where it becomes rough, because when they grow up, they have this tendency now. It's now hard because it was so far in the past. You really have to have some fucking sick listening skills that can lead them to the cause. And it's difficult when it's something from way back.
Yeah.
You know,
You gotta dig
it's
deep.
and a lot of times it's just from the parents. I mean, almost, unless there's obviously a traumatic event that can change some shit. You know, when you lose people, so obviously you lose a job, that can be traumatic. You know, something. So things like that obviously will change you. But no matter what, it's like, I always go back to it until someone changes my mind. Otherwise, I feel like it always starts with a bad perspective. What's your perspective on what you're talking about?
Yep.
Because if it's bad, all your decisions, every single one of them will follow that. So the kids, they think they're a loser. All their decisions follow that. All of them. Until they go like, oh, that's a thing that happens. That bully who's actually getting his ass kicked at home.
Yeah.
Shit. My bad. Like, you kind of live a little bit differently. Now you feel a little, you know, you don't feel like the victim and this. It just kind of helps you out a little more. But yeah, dude. So we're like at the 1 hour mark, man.
Nice.
fast.
Yeah, that was good. So, but like Carl said, man, I think the more conversations about this is what's going to help.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
really for us to get more out there, we're hoping people will donate more to Start Day One, because this is our mission. We're trying to proactively help more people out before they get there.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you change their perspective here, man, it's so much harder to get down here, right? So we're really hoping that we can multiply what we're doing. Obviously, it's getting more reach as far as the videos go, but mostly sometimes it's like personal interaction. As we get out of the quarantine, we want to send speakers out to high schools, colleges, military bases, rehab centers, and telling the information that Carl and I actually talked about. You know how many people, if people heard this, that might be going through something, that probably something would have clicked and maybe their perspective could have changed, and then it would end there.
Just say
I'm not going to wait
one
for
person.
a phone call. Like, that's insane to me, you know? So anyway, thank you so much, Carl.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
everybody who joined to listen, and hopefully take some knowledge from it, pass it along, or hopefully it helped you.
Yeah, sounds good.
absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank
Until
you.
next time,
Until next week, same time, same place.
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
See
guys.
ya.
Bye.